There's a theory that says you can never actually die. Not your consciousness, not your awareness. You may watch the world fade, feel your last heartbeat, and yet, somewhere, somehow, you wake up again. Not in heaven, not in hell, but in a branch of reality where you didn't die. It's called quantum immortality, a consequence of the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics. And if it's true, it means death is an illusion, a local event. You don't die. The universe just edits the story around you so that your observer's thread keeps going. This isn't mysticism. It's born from the same mathematics that explain how electrons exist in multiple states at once, or how a single photon can interfere with itself as if it traveled two paths simultaneously. If everything, including your body and brain, follows quantum rules, then when your survival becomes a quantum event, there's always some version of you that continues. But here's the unsettling twist. If this is real, you will never experience your own death. Everyone else may see it. They may bury your body, mourn your loss, move on. But your consciousness will simply shift, quietly, into the version of reality where you survived. Again and again, forever. So what happens when immortality isn't a blessing but a trap? When the very laws of physics turn existence into an endless continuity you can never escape. Because if quantum immortality is true, you may already be living it. To understand how quantum immortality could even make sense, we have to go back to one of the strangest revolutions in science, the birth of quantum mechanics. At the microscopic level, particles don't behave like tiny billiard balls. They exist in superpositions, meaning they occupy many possible states at once. An electron isn't in one spot or another, it's in every possible spot until we measure it. When that measurement happens, the wave of probabilities collapses and one outcome becomes real. But in 1957, physicist Hugh Everett III asked a dangerous question. What if the wave function never collapses at all? What if all outcomes happen, each in its own separate branching universe? In one branch, the cat in Schrödinger's box is alive. In another, it's dead, and both realities coexist, equally real, forever. Now apply that same principle to you. Every decision, every risk, every breath creates countless new branches of the universe. Most of them are identical, but some diverge, slightly or drastically, based on quantum events. If you almost got hit by a car but didn't, that didn't outcome exists in one universe, while in another, you didn't make it. Quantum immortality takes this logic and pushes it to its darkest conclusion. When your life is at stake, when your death becomes dependent on quantum probabilities, there will always exist at least one branch where you survive. Your consciousness, being the observer, can only continue in those branches. You can never actually experience your own death, because consciousness cannot exist in the universes where you died. This is sometimes illustrated with a thought experiment called the quantum suicide test. Imagine a machine that fires only if a quantum particle collapses into one state rather than another. Each time you pull the trigger, there's a 50% chance it fires. From an external observer's view, you'll eventually die. But from your own perspective, you'll always find yourself in the branch where it didn't fire, over and over, forever. Disturbing, right? Because this means the continuity of your awareness could be unstoppable. Every fatal disease, every accident, every final heartbeat, somehow, somewhere, there's a version of reality where you keep going. But if this is true, what happens after centuries of surviving everything the universe throws at you? What would that version of you become, trapped in a chain of endless survival while everyone else fades away? Because in the logic of quantum immortality, death is never the end. It's just the one outcome you can never observe. Everything we've been taught about life and death depends on one unspoken rule. That reality is singular. One body, one lifetime, one end. But if the many worlds interpretation is true, that rule collapses. There is no single timeline. There's no single you. There's a quantum forest of yous, each following a slightly different path, each one as real as the next. We like to think of consciousness as local, tethered to the brain like light to a bulb, but quantum theory whispers something else, that consciousness might just be the path through probabilities. You're not a static being. You're a traveler moving through the branches that allow your awareness to exist. And that means your sense of continuity, of I am still here, could be the result of a cosmic filter that only lets you experience survival. Here's where it gets weird. Let's say you're in a hospital room, heart failing, seconds from cardiac arrest. There are billions of possible quantum microstates in that instant. tiny fluctuations that decide whether a neuron fires, a clot moves, or a single atom in your DNA bonds differently. In one branch, you flatline. In another, you don't. From your own perspective, you can only continue in the branch where you didn't. From the outside, it looks like death. From the inside, it feels like waking up again. Maybe the doctor's face looks slightly different. Maybe the light outside the window shifts in color. Maybe you never even realized that the timeline changed. To you, it's just another moment. Your consciousness seamlessly stitching together a new version of reality where you survived. That's the illusion quantum immortality breaks. The illusion that death is a wall. Instead, it becomes a filter. Every time you should have died, your awareness slips through the cracks of probability into the branch that lets you continue. It's not mystical. It's mechanical, cold, mathematical. But this explanation hides a terrifying implication. If consciousness always flows towards survival, then somewhere in the infinite sea of universes, there's a version of you that's been doing this for eons. Every possible death sidestepped, every timeline outlived, alone, drifting through universes where everyone else has already gone. And if that's the price of never truly dying, what kind of existence is that? Because maybe immortality isn't a gift at all. Maybe it's the most merciless law the universe ever wrote. If quantum immortality sounds like pure science fiction, here's where it gets unsettling. The physics that allow it are not fringe theories. They're embedded in some of the most experimentally verified foundations of modern science. Let's climb the ladder of evidence, step by step. Step 1. Superposition is real. In 2019, researchers at Yale managed to place a tiny mechanical drum made of billions of atoms into a quantum superposition. It vibrated and stood still at the same time. We've gone beyond photons and electrons. We're now seeing quantum behavior in objects large enough to be visible under a microscope. That means quantum weirdness doesn't stop at the atomic scale. Step 2. Decoherence doesn't destroy possibilities. It hides them. When we observe the world, it appears classical because of a process called decoherence. It's like the universe blurs all the parallel branches so that, to us, only one remains visible. But those hidden outcomes don't vanish. They remain embedded in the universal wave function. Physicists like Sean Carroll and David Deutsch argue that the many worlds interpretation simply takes that math seriously. Every potential outcome continues, whether we see it or not. Step 3. Consciousness and observation. No one fully understands how observation chooses a reality. But experiments like the delayed choice quantum eraser prove that measurement can retroactively change what happened in the past. Observation rewrites history. If consciousness is somehow tied to observation, then awareness might play an active role in which branch of the universe it follows. You may not choose survival consciously, but your awareness can only persist in universes where survival occurs. Step 4. Probability as existence. In quantum physics, something isn't real because it's certain. It's real because it's possible. The higher the probability, the more universes exist where it happens. Your death, being a low probability event when viewed across infinite branches, is statistically swamped by versions where you didn't die. From the first-person point of view, survival becomes the only consistent experience. This isn't proof of immortality, but it is proof that physics allows for endless branching, each containing a version of you that continues. When all versions are equally real, the question becomes, which one does your consciousness inhabit? And that's where science starts to tremble. Because consciousness isn't measurable, it's the one variable quantum theory can't pin down. So if the universe constantly creates branches where you survive, and consciousness always flows through continuity, could the missing link between physics and awareness be the reason death feels impossible from the inside? And if so, how would you ever know you've already crossed that line? If quantum immortality is true, it's not just a scientific curiosity, it's a philosophical earthquake. It shatters what it means to be human. Because if you can never truly die, then what exactly are you? A consciousness trapped in an infinite sequence of survival events, a wandering awareness jumping from branch to branch, never resting, never ending? Let's think about what this does to the concept of identity. We assume there's one continuous you stretching from birth to death. But in a quantum multiverse, identity isn't singular. It's statistical. There are countless versions of you diverging every second, and you are simply the one whose story didn't stop. Immortality, then, becomes a filter. You're not the chosen one. You're the leftover. the consciousness that kept existing because it couldn't do anything else. This idea disturbs both scientists and philosophers because it blurs the line between physics and metaphysics. It suggests consciousness is not just an emergent property of the brain, but a cosmic traveler, a self-reinforcing phenomenon that rides probability like a wave. And that would make death less like an end and more like a failed measurement, one that simply routes your awareness elsewhere. Critics call this idea untestable, and they're right. You can't run an experiment where someone dies and comes back from another universe to report it. But then again, you wouldn't need to. If quantum immortality is real, every observer already experiences their own continuous survival, with no memory of the universes where they didn't. From their point of view, the evidence would always look exactly like what we already experience, an unbroken stream of awareness. Some physicists hate this concept because it feels too anthropocentric, too mystical. But others, like Max Tegmark and Sean Carroll, admit that the math doesn't forbid it. The many worlds interpretation isn't about belief, it's about consistency. And once you accept the math, quantum immortality is its most chilling corollary. But the true shockwave isn't scientific, it's existential. What does morality mean if you can't die? What does courage mean if every risk simply splinters you into new realities? If your consciousness is eternal by default, does anything still matter? Because immortality changes the stakes of everything. Love, loss, sacrifice, they all gain new meaning if your story never ends, or maybe they lose it entirely. And that's the paradox. Quantum immortality promises eternal life, but it also threatens eternal isolation. Because if you can't die, then what's left to make life precious? If quantum immortality is more than a thought experiment, the future of science might already be walking toward it, without realizing. Because the deeper we dive into quantum computation, consciousness research, and artificial intelligence, the more we're forced to confront one haunting question: what exactly is awareness made of? Quantum computing gives us the first hint. Qubits, quantum bits, can exist in multiple states simultaneously, performing countless calculations at once. But what's fascinating isn't just the speed, it's the structure. Each operation effectively explores parallel outcomes, like a mini version of the multiverse contained inside a chip. We're building technology that mirrors the branching logic of existence itself. Now imagine combining that with advances in neural simulation. Scientists are getting closer to mapping the entire human brain, neuron by neuron, synapse by synapse. When that map becomes perfect, when consciousness can be digitized, we'll face a new frontier. Could your awareness jump between physical and digital branches just like it does across quantum ones? If your brain is copied into a simulation, which you continues? The one in the body or the one in the code? If consciousness can survive transitions between realities, then immortality might not just be quantum, it could be engineered. Some futurists like Ray Kurzweil and Nick Bostrom believe that uploading the mind may eventually achieve a kind of synthetic continuity. But if quantum immortality is real, uploading might only reveal what's already happening, consciousness finding the next stable state that allows it to persist. There's another layer to this future horizon: observation-driven reality. In quantum experiments, the mere act of measurement changes outcomes. In a sense, awareness itself defines what is real. As technology grants us more precise control over quantum states, quantum sensors, entangled networks, quantum internet, we're learning how observation sculpts reality. Could this control one day allow us to choose the branches we move into? To navigate between timelines instead of drifting through them unconsciously? But that's where the chilling part begins. Because immortality through choice is not the same as immortality through inevitability. If consciousness naturally slips into survival branches, then the future might not bring freedom. It might bring realization. A realization that every version of you that could die has already died, and you are the residue that can't stop continuing. So, when technology finally catches up with quantum truth, when we learn to witness our own branching in real time, what will we see? Will we find proof of immortality? Or will we discover that we've been immortal all along, trapped inside a universe that refuses to let us end? Let's make this personal for a moment. Because theories are easy to discuss in the abstract, but the moment you place yourself inside them, everything changes. Imagine waking up tomorrow knowing this might already be happening. That every time your life has been in danger, every narrow escape, every illness that miraculously healed, every accident that almost happened, your awareness might have quietly jumped to the one branch where you made it. You wouldn't notice. No flash of light, no cosmic sound, just continuity. A perfectly normal morning in a reality slightly adjusted to keep you alive. Would you start to see your life differently? Maybe that missed collision at the intersection wasn't luck. Maybe that sudden moment of safety you can't explain wasn't coincidence. Maybe your consciousness is already gliding across versions of the world, millions of them, just to maintain the one thing it can't give up: awareness itself. At first, that might sound empowering. I can't die, but sit with it long enough, and it starts to feel heavy. Because if you can't die, what does that mean for everyone else? You'll still lose people. You'll still watch them vanish again and again, across infinite branches. You'll survive them all. You might even start to wonder, how many universes have I already passed through? How many versions of reality have I left behind, unnoticed, just to keep going? There's a loneliness hidden in that idea, a cosmic solitude no one ever prepared you for. If quantum immortality is true, you'll never experience death, but you might experience eternity one heartbeat at a time. An infinite chain of survival moments stitched together into what feels like a single life. And maybe, deep down, you've already sensed it. That strange feeling when time slows just before disaster. That impossible coincidence that saves you when everything should have gone wrong. Maybe it's not divine intervention or fate. Maybe it's the silent machinery of the universe rerouting your consciousness into another branch where you live on. So, if your awareness really is indestructible, what would you do with that truth? Would you fear it or embrace it? Would you live more boldly, knowing every risk just leads to another version of survival? Or would you start to wonder if bravery even matters when the outcome is already decided? Because if you are the consciousness that never dies, then every choice you make isn't about survival anymore. It's about meaning. So here's the final question, the one that keeps physicists, philosophers, and maybe even you awake at night. If consciousness always finds a way to continue, does that make you immortal, or just endlessly persistent? Because immortality sounds divine, but persistence can be terrifying. It means you never stop. You just keep waking up, one universe after another, endlessly anchored to awareness itself. Maybe that's why time feels so strange sometimes, why memories blur, why moments feel like déjà vu. Maybe those are tiny fractures between branches, small reminders that you've already crossed over more times than you can count. But perhaps there's a mercy hidden in the madness. Because if you never truly die, then existence itself becomes a question of how deeply you can live. Every conversation, every connection, every spark of wonder, that's what gives eternity shape. Immortality without meaning is torture. Immortality with meaning could be transcendence. So maybe the real challenge of quantum immortality isn't escaping death. It's learning how to live forever without losing yourself. And if that thought feels too heavy, just look around. The world you're in right now, the exact configuration of atoms, light, and memory that make this moment real, may be one of countless versions. But it's yours. You're here, still breathing, still curious, still aware. And maybe that's all the proof you'll ever get. Do you believe this quantum idea changes everything, or is it just science fiction? Tell me below. Your view might change someone's mind.